In this video, we're talking about misconduct involving weapons. We've talked about in other videos a set of people who are known as prohibited possessors. So what individuals are not allowed to have deadly weapons or prohibited weapons. We've also talked about the weapons themselves. So what are considered prohibited weapons? What type of explosives or firearm modifications or different accessories are prohibited weapons under the statute? In this video, we're talking about specific conduct. So what type of conduct is prohibited under Arizona law? There's 16 of them. We're going to run through them quickly because there's so many. But first, let's look to the statute. It's under Title 13, 3102, misconduct involving weapons. This is the type of conduct that if it is committed is going to be considered illegal. You can be charged with felonies or misdemeanors. Let's run through them. So first and foremost, if you have a deadly weapon on your person or in a car, and you are committing or in the process of committing a serious, a violent, or a felony offense, that's misconduct involving weapons. If you have a weapon in the vehicle and a law enforcement officer asks you about it, so let's say an officer just stops you for a routine speeding ticket, asks, do you have a firearm in the vehicle? You don't acknowledge that, you don't admit it, they can charge you with a crime with that. It's a subsection, doesn't have to be in the commission of a crime, just if you just fail to acknowledge it. If an officer asks you and you don't acknowledge that you have one, they can charge you with the crime. Similarly to that is that if you're under the age of 21 and you have a concealed deadly weapon on your person or in your vehicle, meaning you cannot see the weapon at all, that's a crime. It's concealed. There are exceptions to this. If it's in a glove box, if it's in a holster, if it's in luggage, there are a lot of different variations on the exceptions to that. So if an officer can see a part of it, if they can see the handle sticking out, if it's not totally concealed, there may be a defense. But if it's concealed and you're under the age of 21, that's illegal. If you are manufacturing, possessing, selling, or transferring a prohibited weapon, and I talked about what those are in a different video, but if it's a prohibited weapon, that's illegal. So just being in possession of a prohibited weapon can be enough to charge you with a crime. If you are a prohibited possessor, so you're somebody who's convicted of a felony, you're an undocumented immigrant, an undocumented alien, there's a number of other prohibited possessors, and you are in possession of a deadly weapon or a prohibited weapon, that is going to be a crime. This is by far the most common way that we see misconduct involving weapons. Somebody who's convicted of a felony is found with a weapon. They're charged with a new felony for having a weapon when they're not allowed to. They're prohibited possessors and they're in possession of a deadly weapon. If you sell or transfer a deadly weapon to a prohibited possessor, you can be charged with a crime. So if you're a firearms dealer, if you're a seller who's selling a firearm to somebody, and that person is a prohibited possessor, you can be charged with a crime for making that transfer or conducting that sale. Also, if you deface a deadly weapon, or you use or you're in possession of a defaced deadly weapon, you can be charged with a crime. So what that means is if you look here at the bottom of this firearm, you'll see a serial number. You'll also see it on the sides here if you look closely. So you'll see that there's a serial number associated with that, with the weapon. If you take a Dremel tool or sand it down or scratch it off, you are now defacing a deadly weapon. If you are in possession of a defaced deadly weapon, so if I had this firearm and the firearm had scratched off serial numbers, I could be charged with a felony for that. However, this is a nice, clear, perfectly legal and lawful firearm. All right, so you can, if you are also using a deadly weapon in the commission of a felony, that's going to be misconduct involving weapons. If you are firing at an occupied structure, so this is actually a big statute, and it's essentially getting at that if you're discharging a firearm at a structure that you know to be inhabited, that's going to be a felony. It's a misconduct involving weapons. You can't fire a gun at a residence or at a structure that's occupied. Think of this like a drive-by shooting. So we see this a lot in criminal syndicates or gangs where they're driving by, shooting at a structure. If that happens, you're going to be charged with the misconduct involving weapons. We'll talk about what that level felony is in a different video. Also, if you are in a public location or at a public event, a public something where You may have the ability to have a firearm present because it doesn't meet any of these other exceptions, and you are asked to remove the firearm lawfully and store it with a particular individual according to the law, and you do not do that. You do not remove it. You can be charged with misconduct involving weapons. You are not allowed to have a firearm or any deadly weapon at a polling place, at a school, at a nuclear power facility or hydroelectric power facility, any basic power facilities. There are exceptions to these different locations. If you are lawful, law enforcement officer, or you're there and you have special permission to have a firearm or a deadly weapon in those locations, you can do so. But generally speaking, if you're kind of just the average citizen, can't have firearms or any deadly weapons in those locations. You can also not give a firearm to somebody for the purpose of committing a felony. So if you give or transfer or sell something to an individual knowing that they're going to be committing a felony, you're going to be charged with misconduct involving weapons. It is another felony charge to do that. So if you know somebody's about to commit a felony and you hand them a firearm, they'll charge you with misconduct involving weapons if you are caught for that. Also, anything involving terrorism, any weapons that are used in the promotion of terrorism or that are involved in terrorism or being used by terrorist groups, that is going to be a very serious, the most serious type of misconduct involving weapons. Any explosives, anything like that, any improvised explosive devices, those are all going to be treated very seriously, very harshly under Arizona law. I talk a lot about firearms in these because they're kind of the most common, but in a different video we talk about what are other prohibited weapons. That includes a lot of explosives. There's IEDs, there's other gases and Molotov cocktails and other things that are on that list. So you want to make sure that you're considering those things when you're reviewing all of these. And finally, anything that's used to promote a gang or a criminal syndicate, as they call it, doesn't necessarily have to be used in the commission of an offense, but if you're doing something with weapons, selling weapons, transferring weapons, anything that they claim is furthering the interest of that criminal syndicate or that gang, they can charge you with misconduct involving weapons, whether it's explosives or firearm suppressors or silencers or any of those things. So you can see here there's 16 different variations of this. The statute is quite long, several pages, and so you can read through it if you want some more details. There are exceptions to these things like military personnel, law enforcement officers, people working in competitions and firearms competitions and those things. So there are a lot of ways that you can maybe not fit into this very succinct list here. I try to cram it all into one page. But if you have been charged with misconduct involving weapons, if you want to speak more about the facts of your particular case to see maybe some of these exceptions apply to you, maybe the facts don't exactly match the statutes. They don't match the purpose of the statute. There's some issues with whether they were done knowingly or recklessly or any of those other mental states. There's a lot that goes into it. So if you're facing misconduct charges, give our office a call. We offer free case evaluations. We're happy to sit down with you, review your specific case, make sure that you have a solid plan and the best defense possible. Give us a call. We look forward to speaking with you. Thanks for watching.